Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. And welcome to another episode of the pod. It is my pleasure to welcome our amazing next guest. And I'm going to try to say this correctly because my default, I would normally say this in Spanish because I live in Mexico, but it's Andrene dos Anjos, not dos Anjos. So welcome to the podcast, Andrene.
Thank you so much, Jason. You know what's funny? I was actually just thinking of that as you were pronouncing it. I'm like, if anyone watches UFC, they'll know how to pronounce my last name.
Oh, really? Is there somebody
Yes.
famous in the USC with dos Anjos?
Yes, I don't even know if he fights anymore. That's bad on me. Raphael, I believe. He was really good back in the day, but I don't know if
Yeah.
he's still active. But I'm like, UFC goers would know how to pronounce my last name.
Wow. Amazing, amazing. And look, I'm so happy to have you along for the ride with me today. You have a long history of working in the B2B space, so the B2B e-commerce space. Most recently, you were digital commerce manager, North America, Wonder Brands, but you've recently, I've heard through the grapevine that you've recently just been promoted. So Wonder Brands, obviously Wonder Bread and a whole constellation of brands under the Wonder Brands umbrella, but you've actually been promoted to Retail Media Manager North America, FGF Brands, which is the parent of Wonder Brands. And that's a recent promotion, yeah?
Yes, oh my gosh, you've nailed it. Yeah, by time this episode airs, I'll fully be transitioned over to FGF Brands, which is the parent company of Wonder Brands. So I'm looking forward to it. The digital team is growing, so that's something that I'm looking forward to and really excited about. And it just allows me to be a bit more streamlined in my focus.
Very exciting. And prior to that, Omnichannel Shopper Marketing Manager Mars, Associate Manager Omni and Shopper Marketing Mars, Digital Category Merchandiser Rogers Sports and Media. So this is not your first digital rodeo by any stretch of the imagination. For those that don't know, how the heck did you come to be in the wonderful world of e-commerce?
That it's an interesting story. I would say by chance. Honestly, I actually studied media studies and journalism. So if you were to ask me right out of school, where do I see myself? I would never say digital, e-commerce, CPG. I didn't even know what CPG was. I always thought I would be behind the scenes, broadcasting. Radio was my passion. Also love TV, but the production side of things. And after university, I did some time at like on the campus and I was doing social media for a bit. I'm like, you know what? I like this digital thing. And it was something that we were always talking about within university. Because within my last couple of years, that's when Facebook was huge, Twitter was huge. So it was coming. But it wasn't until I actually got into advertising, and that was outdoor advertising with Pattison Outdoor. So typical till your Lamar's of the US.
Yes?
I'm like, this is pretty interesting. I really love working with different agencies, brands that kind of opened up my eyes. And then through my years there, I noticed that a lot of our clients were shifting to digital. We had digital, but I'm like, I'm craving for something else in digital. And then that's what led me to Rogers. And that role as a digital commerce manager, digital category manager, I think that really opened up my eyes because it was more than I expected. It was the data and the storytelling, and I think it allowed me to tap back into, like, my journalism roots, and I'm like, "This is where I wanna be," and honestly, since then, it's taken off.
Wow, that's amazing. Very cool. And the cool thing, I guess, about what you're doing now in FMCG, CPG is the fact that this touches the end consumer too. A lot of the marketing and the digital chops, obviously, most of these brands have D2C plays, but the vast majority of their revenue comes through their retail channel partners and their grocery channel partners. But it does have your work directly impacts the end consumer of the products as well. And effectively, you're driving demand on behalf of your retail and supermarket partners. And if you're driving demand for your brands, the place that they could usually get those brands is in their local supermarket or their local shop or their local tienda, right? So the reality is that you have to think of this very much through a end buyer psychology lens as opposed to just a who's my wholesale buyer, which is the supermarket chains that buy your goods. You've got to think of it through the lens of your end consumer buyer.
Exactly, exactly, and they vary depending on where they're shopping, and not even I'm even thinking from, like, a banner perspective, like, the shopper looks completely different, like, it could be the home retailer, but then within their banners, that shopper also looks very different, And I think honestly, that's the part of the role that I love in being tied back to retail media. It's really the end consumer and what they look like. The data for me, it's top notch.
Wow, amazing. And in your immediately prior preceding role, digital commerce manager, North America, and were you leading primarily digital commerce strategy D2C or digital commerce strategy B2B, meaning your retail partners and how they bought through the parent company, the supplier company? Which aspect, or were you working across both?
So I was always B2B. So even though it was digital commerce manager, the main part of my role was retail media. Now I'm just gonna be much more focused and streamlined. So it was retail media tapping into as well as the e-commerce strategy, ODP, digital shelf, things like that, all encompassing. And then, yeah, my new role, retail media manager, will be just a bit more streamlined because we're building out our team. So now we have more team members that will have specific focus areas.
And retail media is such an interesting it's such an interesting concept. The idea of retail media goes back to physical placards in stores. It goes back like, this is the concept of retail media has been around
Yes. Mhm.
80 years, 100 years, right, in mercantile stores, and how you do that merchandising in the store as a brand supplier to that store, that has evolved over the years. The media formats have evolved over the years. The channels that we could use in store have evolved over the years, from music ads or audio ads to end cap video placements on screens to physical pop-ups to taste and try to, like, there's all sorts of different ways that we can get our product and our brands in front of customers inside physical spaces. But why don't you tell me from your perspective how you guys approach this, right? What are you becoming part of these retail media networks? Oftentimes there's networks that own the media placements within a lot of physical retail spaces. And so you can partner with kind of one vendor of retail media, and then you can get into lots of placements or positions. Sometimes you'll have to do a deal directly with a retail chain themselves if they run their own internal retail
Exactly.
media service. And oftentimes there's a distinction between what I would call endemic brands, meaning you're advertising something that that retailer is also selling, versus non-endemic brands, meaning you're advertising your brand or your product, but that retailer that you're advertising in doesn't necessarily sell your product. It's typically, at least in my experience, and look, I've never worked in retail media before.
So
I get you get exposed to it a lot when you're working in e-commerce, particularly in B2B. You get exposed to it a lot because you need to be able to provide the data to those systems. And so I've had to integrate with those systems before. And typically for a brand, I find that endemic retail media marketing has a higher value, because then you can trigger a purchase right there on the spot in that location, to where literally if they're prompted to make a purchase, they can literally go down the aisle and make that purchase right then and there.
there you go.
That's more attractive, right? Because it's in the moment.
There you go, and honestly, that's a entire debate that I have most of the time, and it touches back on, like, my previous role, right? From an omni perspective, I was always looking at it at 360, where now within my new role, I'm focused specifically on digital, but of course, depending on the capability, I also touch in-store. And to answer your actual question, I work directly with the retailer. So I'm working with multiple retailers. I'm
Wow.
working with Loblaw Advance in Canada, Walmart US and Canada, Kroger. So it's all of the different relationships and managing them and then truly getting an understanding for their capabilities, what we're able to do. That's why I say it really depends on the retailer whether I'm touching things in store and it falls within the retail media offerings.
Yes, and are they oftentimes talking audio, video placements, physical are they talking the full range of
They're talking it
formats,
all.
styles, the whole thing, right? And so therefore, internally, it's not just figuring out how to technically integrate with their systems so that you can bid on placements or whatever it might be, or sign a contract for a 12-month window or whatever it is, but it's also, how do we create the creative that we need for those specific placements, or how
Exactly.
do we create the audio ad that we need to inject into their Muzak system or whatever it is. So you become responsible for all of the technical and operational elements of getting those campaigns up and running.
Yes, and the education behind it, right? Because it's one thing to have the team on board. The cool thing about my role, and I think this is why I enjoy retail media so much, is like you're literally sitting in between, depending on your organization, you're sitting in between brand and sales. and your co-pilots to many different departments per se to bring this strategy to life. So you have to understand it from both ends. Brand is going to have their strategy and what they expect for their particular brand, but then the sales team, they're going to have their own point of view and what they're hearing from their merchants day to day, right? So it's bringing that all together, figuring out, okay, what is the strategy? How do we go to market? And then my favorite part, bringing it to life. And then it's the education as well, right? So not all retail media networks are created equal. So when I'm talking to certain people, it's reminding them like, oh no, like at this retailer, we're not able to do that, but we're able to do this here. Then I have to tailor the strategy dependent on what our problem areas are or where we want to highlight or tap into a bit more. But I would definitely say it's a lot of education along the way and explaining certain things, why our timelines are the way they are, how it shows up differently in these retailers. But honestly, it's such a fun spot to be in.
And how do you handle the creative? Do you have a full in-house creative team and capability, or do you work with agencies? Is it a combination of both? Do the retailers sometimes provide media services on top of just the distribution component? Do they have their own templates? Talk me through how you actually go from, okay, cool, I want to have something presented to our potential customers in this location, in this placement, but how do you bridge the gap between concept to now I have a campaign that's active?
Oh, I'm so happy because we actually do have our own in-house digital team. Shout out to
Wow.
Bakehouse. Yes, it's a blessing because I've had it the other way where you're depending on an external agency, and that's great as well. But I'm telling you, just the intricacies of knowing and understanding the brand and just how
Yes.
quick they're able to pump things out, it's a blessing. But once again, when it comes down to the retailer, it comes down to the capabilities, the different templates. There's certain looks and feels that you have to abide by depending on what tactic you're purchasing. So it's a bit of both, but at the end of the day, it's like you want your brand to show up in the best way that it can. And the best way that you could do that is with your internal team who knows and eats, breathes, sleeps the brand and can showcase it. But sometimes we are limited based on the capabilities of the retailer or just the template that we're using for whichever tactic that we've purchased.
Yeah, because I guess you have your own brand guidelines for the house of brands that you represent, but then the retailer has their own brand guidelines, and it's kinda like, okay, how do we harmonize these in such a way that it presents our retail brand in the best light possible? Then we have the supplier brand that we're trying to represent the best light possible. We have to try to find a compromise there, right? Because we wanna make sure that
Exactly.
your brand is front and center, but that all of this media that goes out has a similar look and feel to it, so it's consistent for the buyers that are exposed to the brand. So, yeah, it's a fine line that you have to walk, right?
Yes, and I don't it's one of those things, like, do you ever get used to it? Or maybe that's the joy of the position and kinda managing that, but it's not easy. I can definitely say that, especially in Canada where we do have English and French, and sometimes you're given those strict guidelines for character counts, and I can't remember what the exact percentage is, but something in English is 30% more characters to translate it into French. So sometimes
Wow.
it's really hard when it comes down to character count, I would say, because yes, you want your message to be cohesive no matter where it's being displayed, but sometimes there's the limitations there, even outside of template.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't actually thought about the multilingual in one market. You've got multilingual in different markets, which is normal, but then having multilingual in, the same market is a
Yeah,
unique challenge, and it's interesting that you mentioned about character count because at least here in Mexico, normally when you translate from English to Spanish, 10 to 30% more characters in Spanish than in English. So you've got to try to figure out how that
exactly.
all
So you
fits
get
into
it.
our branding, our positioning, and marketing. So yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, having to cater for French and English in the same campaign in Canada, especially like in places like Quebec, where you
Mhm.
must do French, that's an extra layer of complexity.
It is because even down to translation, is it translating the same? Is it coming across the same way? Sometimes there's executions that were, and I hate saying English Canada,
Yeah.
because yes, Quebec is French speaking, but it's not the only province. It's across the
Yes.
board where, but for the purposes, but yeah, will it translate? So we have to be very mindful. And like I said, it's a really great spot to be because I hear it from both ends. I get to hear it from it being a strategy from a brand standpoint to them selling it in to the sales team and understanding like, will this actually work at their retailer? Yay, no. But yeah, all of these things have to be taken into consideration when executing as well.
And how do you think about the world of programmatic? And so there's been debate a lot, like there's many views and many opinions on this across the ecosystem where many people are saying, hey, retail media is just going to be folded into programmatic and it's going to be just another programmatic placement. Sure, you may have audio placements. Sure, you may have video placements. Sure, you may have still image placements with text overlays. But at the end of the day, if we can bring all these physical placements into our digital ad buying and marketing platforms, then it's going to, in theory, be easier for these brands to make sure that all of the retail media placements are filled at all times. And it's going to open them up to a broader market than if we need to custom integrate with their custom retail media software or whatever it might be. So, what is your sense? Do you think that retail media will eventually just merge with programmatic and it will just be another placement for programmatic ads? Or is this going to stay a pretty distinct discipline and practice and technology for a long while to come?
I hope that it remains the same and it's its own discipline, and I say that being biased. Yes, I'll call it my own biases. But you know what? There's so much that goes into retail media, and it's to me, the heart of it as well is the relationship, right? The relationship with the retailer, truly understanding what their strategy is, the win, the triple win that you normally hear about in marketing. And I don't know if a sense of that would be lost if we went the programmatic route. Personally, I'm not gonna lie. Would it be easier for me in executing day to day? Heck yeah, because I'm not working with so many different retailers, understanding different capabilities, understanding different asset types, things like that. But I don't know. For me, that's where the magic is in truly understanding the consumer, the retailer, the strategy, and executing based on that. But we will see. We will see.
Wow, amazing, amazing. And what do you think as you like how long has your house of brands been doing retail media? Have they been doing this for 20 years? Is this a relatively new in-house capability that they're developing and they're wanting to enhance and grow the reach of your retail media capability? It like where is this on the hierarchy of digital capabilities inside the business? Like how much of a priority is being placed on this versus your standard Google, your Meta, your TikTok ads, these different types of digital marketing that we can do nowadays. How does this fit in with the marketing sphere of the house of brands that you're managing?
I could only speak to it so much with us being a private company, but I could tell you a few things. The fact that my role 6 months ago didn't exist, and now it's also being expanded, right, to a complete focus area. I think it goes to show just how much FGF brand really is taking in digital, and they understand the importance of digital, especially retail media and e-commerce as a whole. They also consider themselves a tech company that bakes. So if you get the 2 and 2 and putting it together, but I think that's actually what attracted me to the company, just how interested they were in digital and pushing it forward. They know this is the place that we need to be. The penetration may not be as high as it is in store, but it is growing, right? And we need to keep our foot on the gas and understand what is our strategy, how we're gonna execute it, and how we're gonna show up. So I definitely think it is a priority, and I think it will continue to be a priority for FGF brands.
And how do there's 2 immediate questions that leap to mind, and again, I'm not the expert in this space, you are, so I'm sure that you'll correct me wherever my thinking might be wrong. 2 things that if I was in your role, I would feel that there could be a challenge. One is, how do I keep our campaigns harmonized? Like, for example, how do I make sure that our PPC campaigns, how do I make sure that our social campaigns, how do I make sure that our retail media, how do I make sure that when I'm looking at our campaign calendar for the next 6 months or 3 months or whatever it is, how do I make sure that we're in line with each other, but that we're leveraging the unique capabilities and the unique formats of retail media that are so different to your pay-per-click ads or whatever it might be. So we have to stay harmonized, meaning that we don't want, in retail media, we have one campaign, and then through some of our other channels, we have a totally different campaign that's at
Exactly.
odds with one another. How do you make sure you stay harmonized whilst also still being able to remain independent enough to be able to do cool shit in Belize?
I love it. Honestly, it's that. It's communication. That is what you have to do. So, like I said, I technically sit in between brand and sales, and it's making sure we're on those connects. We understand what is the business goal at the end of the day what does brand intend on doing to support the business goal and what is sales looking to do and bringing that together, having scheduled connects, putting a plan together, revising, does this still work? Has the business changed? Communication at the end of the day. And I think I mentioned it earlier is that's why I love this role so much because you get to see so many different point of views where it might not be that easy for other people within different functions. They're just, this is my goal, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm working on, where I'm the connector in bringing it together. But at the same time, showing my worth, right? Saying, okay, this is our strategy. This is how we're going to go about it. But this is what makes it different from my point of view and what I'm able to do from a retail media standpoint, right? Like the data, the access to the different audiences, things like that. That's stuff that maybe the brand team wouldn't really have through their overarching media buy, right? So still showing what makes me different, but bringing everyone to the table and really understanding what is our goal and how we're going to accomplish it within the walls of our retailers and of course online for the most part.
And how do you guys start to think about attribution? Now, this is famously difficult, even in a pure digital sense. This is attribution is really difficult, right?
Yeah.
Because we had there's many different models around this first touch, multi-touch. We have so many ways to measure attribution that trying to find harmonized attribution that runs across pure digital versus mixed digital and physical mediums, including billboards, including retail media,
Oh,
including
I know.
pay-per-click, including social. It becomes because everybody wants to claim it, and
That's
rightly so,
exactly it. That's
right?
exactly it. And these are the conversations that we have all the time. I would say the quick response to that is I am, at the end of the day, handcuffed to the reporting that I'm given based on the retailer, but is it our job to push them and let them know what we're looking for internally and how we will turn this success story internally? I need the help, and I'll tell them, like, "This is what I'm looking for, this is what I need to speak to," but it's different across the board, but it's really hard as well because sometimes when I'm thinking back to more of like my Omni days, something will show up really well. And of course, even like from a vendor perspective, if you're working with third parties to execute, they're going to want to claim that win, right?
Yes.
And my first thing is, wait, what promos did we have running at the same time? There's so many moving pieces to it. I do think and I hope that we'll get better at it in the future, but definitely trying to lock into incremental. I know Omni ROAS is also another thing that I'm hearing as well, but I would say in my day-to-day, I'm very dependent on what the retailer is able to offer me and taking that back and just pushing them and saying, "If we're not able to show for this right now, what can we do in the meantime that will help me build my story to show that what we executed brought X amount of dollars in that we already wouldn't have received if we didn't have this campaign in market." But it's hard.
And is the biggest challenge the fact that retailers have are notoriously reticent for want to share sales data, for want to share comparative sales data, store comparison data, year-over-year sales incremental improvement. But obviously, they are the only ones that can say, okay, cool. This is our average sales of your products, your SKUs over this window of time. But now we've been running this campaign over this window of time, and it's boosted it by 5% or whatever it is during that window of time. So we know that it's had a material impact. We don't know exactly what the impact is, but we think it's a material impact based on our incremental sales growth. But then we have to also strip out things like seasonality. We have to strip out things like
Exactly.
other campaigns that are competing. We have to there's so many things that can impact that have nothing to do with your specific campaign that it's really hard to do any kind of incremental attribution in isolation.
And that's the thing, right? So it's like we're asking for it, but will we ever get to the true meaning of incrementality? And that's where I scratch my head quite a bit. And yeah, like you mentioned, it's not easy getting the data from the retailers. Have I noticed a difference over the years? I definitely say yes, especially from the seat that I'm sitting in from more of a retail media point of view. I've mentioned it before where in the past, I felt like I was being sold to and not listened to. And I definitely see a turn. We're still ways away to getting so specific to say that this drove this. I don't know if we'll ever get to where we wanna be, but it's a struggle.
And how do most of the retailers that sell media placements, do they have a similar pricing model? Meaning, obviously, in pay-per-click, it's really clear how we charge, how much it's gonna cost. It's a bidding scenario. If we're talking TikTok Shop, it's very transparent how much of a cut TikTok gets. Like, most pure digital channels are pretty transparent around how do you set a budget? How do you make sure and stay within the budget? What is it likely to cost us for this campaign over this window of time? Most digital ad platforms are reasonably accurate in that regard so that you can control things. You can control your ROAS, you can control your ROI, you can control your mares. There's certain things you can control in a pure digital environment that feel harder to control in a retail media environment. So
Yeah,
they charge number if it's a video screen and they're showing a 15-second clip of an ad of yours, say, for example, do they charge you for per number of times they showed that ad? Or do they like and I'm guessing the different placements in the store obviously would
exactly.
generate a premium too, because if I'm on an end cap, that's probably more desirable than
More
being in the middle of an aisle, for example.
exactly, and I haven't gotten there from, like, an end cap standpoint. For me, something that I'm interested in is the evolution of screens, so that's something that's happening here in Canada in the US as well, but being in a different category than where I was, like, 6 months ago with it being bakery, I think of it completely different than how I did for pet.
Of
And so,
course.
okay, we're installing screens. Do we have a bakery screen? Can we actually test? And once again, it does come down to the retailer. Pricing structure is it varies, it varies. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it does not make sense. Sometimes when you're putting your plans together, there's ways that you could come to the table, speak the strategy, and then you're able to get discounts or one-offs or, okay, if it's running for X amount of time, then you know what? You'll get, like, a savings here because it's not only, like, a 4-week play, things like that. But I would definitely say it varies depending on the retailer, and that's a part of the job too, really understanding how much will get me at a Loblaw versus a Walmart, but also what will that return get me as well. There's also some retail media networks that they're still in their infancy stage. Some are very forthcoming and open and disclosing that, and of course, we could also see that, and then that may impact pricing as well, but it's all over the place, and it changes. That's the other thing too. I could book something today and wanna book it maybe 2 weeks from now, and the cost could be completely different. It's all in their hands.
Wow, wow.
Yeah,
And are there ever placements that they don't have yet? Like, how much influence do you have over saying, "Hey, you guys don't have a screen in bakery," for example, you
exactly.
but
Yep.
we would love you like, maybe we do a contribution where we help to set this up or something like that because we need a placement that you don't yet offer, but it's really important to us. Are you willing to add that placement so that we can start advertising through you in these spaces? Are they that flexible, or is it, "No, we'll decide where we're gonna advertise, and you're stuck with what you get"?
Yes, a bit of both, and this is why I say I I wouldn't wanna go the pragmatic route for this because I'm able to have these conversations, right, through the relationship. So, the fact that I'm able to touch and work with so many different retailers, sometimes I'm like, "Hey, retailer X, don't need to mention, but I'm working with them and they have this cool capability. Any chance that this is on a roadmap? Yes, no." Having those conversations, and I find that recently, retailers are more open to it. They're more open to letting us know if it's on their roadmap, if maybe, "You know what? Haven't really thought of that, but we're working on X, Y, and Z for now." And that's a part of the relationship that I really do enjoy because I'm touching so many different places. I could also help influence or be like, "Hey, I'm noticing this out in the world of retail media. What are you guys noticing, or is it coming?" But yeah, it varies. It varies. I would like to say that I have influence, but I I don't know. I don't know how much in power I truly have.
And why do you think that after in a post-COVID world
You were
you're
just
back.
in the middle of a great question. What was it?
Yeah. So, why do you think that post-COVID, when QR codes were completely normalized during COVID and everybody was using QR codes to access everything everywhere all the time, why do you think QR codes disappeared from retail spaces as quickly as they came in during COVID? And the reason I ask that is because I feel like in terms of retail merchandising, not just retail media, but in retail
Mhm.
merchandising, full stop, that there was a massive missed opportunity to continue to leverage QR codes for information, for
There you go.
scanning and creating endless aisle type of environments, being able to create virtual carts, being able to pay in store on your phone and just walk out. I just feel like there was so many missed opportunities with QRs. And I feel in retail media, there's an equally missed opportunity where, where you could be taken to a full campaign with a QR code or a full YouTube video or to more information about the product that's being advertised or to a special link that would generate a special coupon or discount code that could then be scanned at retail checkout in grocery so that you can get better attribution. And like I feel like there's such a massive missed opportunity there to start joining the physical and digital dots through the use of QR codes. Why do you think that's the case?
Oh my gosh, I could go on about this, and it's funny that you mentioned post-COVID because I'm thinking coming out of COVID, and I was in a completely different role. It was 360, and even though I was focused on retail media as well, I would definitely say it swang more of the in-store side of things. So creating the displays, having the QR codes and things like that. And I would say it's not as easy as it may seem. I'm here with you, like, with the QR codes, it's a store it gives an opportunity for more brand telling, more information, like, but when it comes to in-store and what you're doing with QR codes, it really depends on where you're linking, right? Because sometimes what you might find is that the retailer doesn't want to take the consumer outside of their ecosystem. So I found that sometimes selling in certain campaigns it's like the first thing it's, "Are you allowed a QR code?" "Yes." "So where is it linking? And how do they know that they need to buy it here?" So that's one side of it. The other point of it too is like sitting in this role at the end of the day, it's I wanna convert. So my use for a QR code may look completely different from where the brand team would want it, right? To storytell, to it really depends on the strategy, but it's not as easy as we think it is, especially when it comes to involving a retailer, when it comes to putting your product, your shipper with a QR code that's linking out somewhere else. Where I do
Yes.
think that there is still opportunity, and I agree, QR codes, there's opportunity there. Maybe loyalty, that's
Yes.
something outside of, like, my day-to-day just by speaking to other CPGs and vendors. Loyalty might be the next place where you might see QR codes populate and the gamification of it all, but I think from a retailer and brand standpoint, it's gonna have to join somewhere. It's not gonna be they're not gonna say yes to scan that QR code, and now you're taken somewhere else completely outside of our ecosystem.
Yeah, but I guess I also think that if they provided the QR code infrastructure themselves and there was a time limited, for example, discount window, okay, cool, scan this QR code. It's going to pop up in our app on your phone. So you need to install our app. It's going to connect to our app. That creates stickiness of the app. We're going to then have a time limited discount window. So you're going to check out of our store within the next 30 minutes with
Mm,
this product. And now you're gonna get 10% off. You're gonna get 20% off, whatever it is. But it's a time limited window. It's basically we're going to try to force the conversion right here, right
love
now.
that.
It's not an unlimited campaign. And then all of a sudden attribution becomes much clearer for both parties, both for the retailer
Exactly.
and for the advertiser. And so I feel like if they're going to all the trouble to build the retail media infrastructure, why also wouldn't they build in the conversion infrastructure, the prompting infrastructure, the tracking infrastructure? Why
Exactly.
wouldn't they build all that at the same time? Because it would benefit them and it would benefit you.
I agree, and maybe it's on the roadmap. Maybe this idea is sitting somewhere with one of our retail media partners, and we're just not aware of it as yet. Because I agree, it's if we're not able to do it, come to you with it, or there might create some conflict and there's the need, do it yourself. Because I'm pretty sure some brands would want to pay for that because so many different executions and contests and different ways of thinking about things and like loyalty, like we said, creates that urgency and to know that, yes, for sure, that campaign drove that because you scanned it at this store at this time. And hopefully it's linked back to some type of loyalty data so it can be tracked, which would then also help us afterwards for retargeting and things like that. But maybe that's what the retailers are working on. I haven't heard anything yet, but that would be a game changer, I feel, like, especially in this omni-channel world.
Yeah, very exciting times. What is I know you're new in the role and I know you're just getting your feet under the desk, but if you were to look out over the next 6, 12, 18 months in what you're doing, what are the priorities for you in terms of either upskilling yourself, upskilling your team, building additional capabilities inside the business to be able to do this better at scale? Like what are the things that matter to you right now as you look forward in your role?
Honestly, the big that I'm looking forward to is the focus. Being able to spend more time in the data, right? Being a shared service between Wonder Brands and FGF is amazing. I learned so much, so many different strategies, so many different people, so many different teams. But I think, like I said, the fact that digital is growing and they've now created a space where we have a bigger team, we have our roles, being able to just get knee deep in the data, working directly with the customer, sorry, understanding the challenges and being able to pinpoint, to me, that is my biggest goal. I'm looking to learn a bit more about the space because it's ever evolving, and that's something that I definitely love. At the end of the day, I need to sell. That is the biggest thing. But by being more ingrained and understanding how I could go about it, that's also gonna to help the business as well. But I'm really in I can't wait to really dig deep.
I love that. I love that. And if I've seen you pop up, I've seen your name pop up at a couple of different events, B2B Online and a couple of other events over the last couple of years. Now that you're well and truly inside the B2B world, what events, what type of conferences, what types of things help you feel like you're part of, because there are some dedicated retail media conferences and events and activities, but what makes you feel like you're not like the lone ranger out there doing your thing, that makes you feel like you're part of a community where you can bounce ideas off your peers? Is it Slack groups? Is it WhatsApp groups? Is it like, where do you find your people? Because I know with B2B, I'm part of the B2B e-commerce association, and I go to lots of B2B specific e-commerce events and things like that. But for you, where are your people?
Where are my people? That's a good question. There's a few ways. I had to figure this out too, all for myself. So one thing is I definitely lean in on the retail media specific conferences. Personally, I would say P2PI has helped me in ways that I can't even describe. Being in the omni and retail media space and being very new to it, a lot of the data that was coming out at the time when I was learning was all American based. Right. So when P2PI said, okay, we're going to do something in Canada and it's going to be Canadian specific, to me, my eyes opened up wide. And it was really nice to get out there, meet other people within the industry that are Canadian based. But I also take time to see what's happening out in the US and attending the P2PI conferences there. Last week was my first time actually attending e-tail, and that to me was eye-opening because it wasn't just retail media focused. It was a whole bunch of other folks. And if you saw my post, it really humbled me because I felt as though I didn't realize that I was in this retail media bubble and that there's people out there, yes, within ecom that have no idea what retail media is, or they've heard about it, but they're not too sure. So yeah, that experience really humbled me, but always great for networking. And then, you know what? I just research. I search. There's a women in retail media group,
Wow.
WhatsApp, on LinkedIn as well. There's a women in commerce media group. They were one of the first to do it. It's also we're in digital. We like, but I think getting out to the conference, meeting people, speaking, that's always going to be the best way. Maybe I'm a bit old school in that, but we're out there.
I love it. I love it. And look, if you could sprinkle fairy dust on the retail media space and you could change one thing about it at the snap of your fingers, what would it be?
Am I allowed to be biased again?
Of course.
I would say not thinking in silos. It's not going to work if we continue to think and work in silos. The true magic happens when we're able to bring everyone together and execute the strategy. We're getting there. We're not there yet. There's still a lot of work to be done, but just not thinking and working in silos. If we could get rid of that would be my wish.
That's so true, and it's even, I feel like, physical merchandisers in stores and digital merchandisers on websites, like, they never talk, they never share data, they never
No,
share information,
no.
they don't think that either one can help each other. In fact, they don't oftentimes respect each other at all. You know, pure digital peeps They think physical merchandise is, "Oh, that's so old school. Oh, what are you gonna do? Make something look pretty in store, make it look attractive, make sure that we get as much shelf space as possible," whatever it might be. And then the physical people are like, "This is how people have been buying stuff for hundreds of years, and
Exactly.
still 80,
I was
ninety
about to
percent of our
say,
revenue
and
comes from
still,
physical spaces." So the reality is each side have their issues, and each side need to get their shit together and realize cross-pollination of ideas is a thing, and it really helps each other massively, even when it comes to Boost and Berry and all that sort of stuff in search
yes,
and product recommendations and we just have so much to learn from each other by sharing
that
data.
is it.
Uh, and
That is
and
exactly it.
so I
I
see this
hope.
across many aspects of digital and physical, right? Retail, and you're sitting right at the apex of physical and digital. So yeah, you get hopefully you get to be the unifying force inside the business. That would be a really cool thing. And
Oh, that
yeah,
would be
fingers.
my wish if I could do that, if I could do that. But like I said, I'm really happy with where I'm at, and I really do that everyone's coming to the table, and I love the curiosity as well. But you know what? We could also do all that we want internally too. The retailers also have some jobs to be done as well internally. There's a lot of retailers though, they own it and they know and they're working on it. But I think until we unlock that unlock, there's gonna be some work to be done. And it might be rework. We might be doing the same thing over and preaching to the choir, but that's my wish. Maybe a year from
Well,
now, I don't know how long it's gonna take, Jason, but I'm here for it.
I might have to interview you in another year and see how far we've come in that time. But as we do start to come down to the end of our time together, and I so appreciate you spending your time with me today, this is the point where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you and let you ask me one question, any question you like, it can be personal or professional. So, Andrene Dos Anjos from FGF Brands. Now, what is your question for me today?
I would have to once again lean in on being biased.
Yes.
Your story is so interesting with you born and raised in the US, moving around. I just want to know, would you do it all over again? And what have you learned from an e-commerce and just like your day-to-day in the space? What superpower has that given you?
Not only would I do it more and more often, but yes, this I think that living in different countries is now my third country that I've lived in, and I think I'm up to 30 or 40 countries that I've visited now and traveled to. We just came off of an 8 country trip and this is my first week back from an 8 country trip. And then last year we were in Europe and we did an 8 country trip in Europe. Look, travel for us, for me and my wife, it is central to who we are. We are travelers. So
Yeah.
it's not something we just like to do. It's actually part and parcel of who we are as human beings. My wife's Asian. She's from New Zealand, but she's half Chinese, half Vietnamese. So
Yeah.
I've always been interested in different cultures. I've always been interested in different foods. I've always been interested in different ways of thinking, different views on the world. That's something that I've always had a curiosity around even since I was very young, and which is a little bit weird for an American because a lot of Americans aren't. And it's I think the stat is something like less than 50% of Americans even have a passport.
I
So
know.
even for the Americans that wanna travel, a lot of them can't because they don't have a passport, and they're working so hard just to survive that they can't travel. And so not only do I think travel has made me a better human, it's made me a more empathetic human, it's made me a better business person, it's made me a better digital person. I think it's just improved and enriched my life in ways that it's hard for me to even describe all the ways that it's made my life better, and I cut my teeth in the digital arena down in Australia and New Zealand, and then I brought all those learnings
Yeah.
back into North America, and it's been so fulfilling, and I don't take it for granted. I know it's a rare gift to be able to travel as much as I do. I never take it for granted, and I always respect it. And when I get to travel and visit with a client, or I get to go to a conference and speak at a conference or whatever, I really try my best to just like squeeze. I try to make the juice worth the squeeze, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why whenever my wife and I go to if I'm speaking at a conference, we'll always plan like an additional week in that wherever that is, especially if it's a place we've never been to before. We'll like stay on an additional week and we'll do some sightseeing and we'll hang out and we'll try to do all the touristy things in that area. And so yeah, travel for me has been the single best education I could have ever given myself. And so I would encourage people to travel early and often as much as they can. So And I understand if you've got kids and stuff, it's really hard and it's
You
expensive.
could still
My
do
wife and I
it.
have
You could still do it.
you can do it, but it's hard. It's just harder,
It
right?
is.
And
Yeah.
my wife and I have chosen not to have kids. And one of the reasons we've chosen not to have kids, there's many of them, but one of the reasons is because we like to travel so much and
Yeah.
we want to put our money and our effort and our resources into that versus into raising a child. And
Yeah.
yes, that's selfish, and we're pretty honest about the fact that we're probably too selfish to have a kid. And you've got to put that selfishness aside. If you choose to have children, you got to choose also to put a certain amount of selfishness aside to be able to focus on them. And we've just chosen not to go that path.
Yeah.
And so we have dogs instead. So we got 2 dogs, and we have house sitters that come and look after our dogs when we're away. And then we come back home and we miss our dogs and we love our dogs, but we still have a little bit more freedom than I think if we had kids. But to your point, you can do it. I think it's about, is it a priority in your life? And do you see value in that beyond just the, oh, do the tourism thing?
That's
Do you
exactly
think that
it.
it
It's
enriches your
different.
life in an educational way? And if you don't see that, then you're probably not getting as much out of travel as you could.
Oh, I love that. I love that. When you said that it's fulfilling, it's like nail on the head. And the fact that you were able to touch on the fact that you were able to take your learnings from New Zealand and bring it back to the US. That's another reason why I find market just so interesting, traveling, learning, and seeing, because it's, you know what, we're not there yet, or maybe I didn't think about it in that way. That would be actually cool to take and see what work, or hey, this is what I've done in the past. Maybe this might work for you. But it's such an interesting spot and place to be in. No, I agree with you and the love of traveling and the playing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's something I think, if you're not traveling, you're missing out. That's what I would say. But if people want to get a hold of you and they want to chat about all things retail media or business or digital, I'll drop a link to your LinkedIn profile into the show notes. But other than
Thank
that, how do you
you.
like people to reach out and have a chat with you?
LinkedIn's always the best. That is like my go-to instead of scrolling Facebook. That's where I usually am. That's where I get all my learnings. That's where I network and connect. Find me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Listen, thank you so much for your time. I realized we had a few technical difficulties, so I appreciate you persisting with me throughout this conversation. An hour has absolutely flown by. Thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to speak to you again soon.
Oh, Jason, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you for sticking by me with all the tech issues and all, but the show must go on.
If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.